And I'm recording. So everybody, today we started making this ray gun. What we brought in is an Illustrator file. We brought the shapes in, and I just made the shapes that were appropriate that I couldn't make in Maya, because these discs I can make them in Maya, little circles I can make in Maya, and this spheroid shape I can make in Maya, and tubes and things I can make in Maya. But these odd shapes were a little harder to make in Maya, though you can do them with curves. I did them with the Illustrator file, saved it as Illustrator 5, Illustrator 8, brought it in, and then I made them planar under surfaces, and then I extruded them with the extrude tool in poly modeling. And so the extrude tool is here to give them some depth. And we rounded them a little bit by smoothing them, and it seems to look okay. We even have this trigger shape here, which I need to position in a place where I think it's appropriate. Space Mouse has kind of a claw. So if we move this back and we rotate it out, I think his claw can get in there and hold it. And you could put it in different places here. I think that's probably pretty good. Now, if I go to the side view, I'm holding down the space bar and left mouse, right view. Actually, this is in not facing the right way, because normally the front view would be a different way. So normally you'd have the front facing the front. So when we're all done, I'll rotate it to the front. It just makes more sense and easier to deal with. I'm going to hit E, and then that's the rotation tool. I'm going to hit D, and I'm going to set the pivot of this to where a trigger would pivot somewhere in there. You can even put a pin there, like a sphere or a cylinder going all the way through, to show that there's a locking mechanism there. And then if you were going to take apart the gun, you could push that pin out and then the trigger would come out. So if you think about how things work, sometimes you can make them look like they're really supposed to be. So now this trigger, if I select it with object mode, I have to move this back to where it was. And I have to get out of D by hitting E. Then I can rotate this, and you can, Control Z, get the trigger selected. To deselect this, I'm just going to click off to the side and then get the trigger. There's the kitty. Hi, kitty. Hi. You're a good girl. All right, and then if I did E, you can see that I can rotate the trigger. So you can do that. Now this gun doesn't seem to have a safety. I think I'll put a safety on it on the side. Always good to have a safety. And it's always good to have another set of fingerprints on your BB gun. That's what Bart Simpson says. So I'm going to take this cylinder, a sphere, and make a sphere. Now with spheres, I'm going to hit R and make it larger. I like these patterns on the top where it has the triangles. I like it facing forward, like the front of a blimp or the front of a submarine. For making people's faces, I don't use spheres. I use a cube and smooth it so they're all quads and they make a better shape, because these get a little pinchy. Maybe that sounds like an American Idol. If I come over here to my properties window, which is this one right here, which again, I think Maya doesn't tell you that's properties. It's got layers. You can see the layers here. And we could use layers more. I just didn't get used to layers because they weren't as good in the beginning. But layers are really good because you can turn things off and on. I'll talk about layers again probably next time. But I'm going to rotate this sphere on the x-axis and make sure you're on rotate 90 degrees, hit return, so that area, and it's not facing the way I want, so I have to rotate Z 90 degrees, and that's because it wasn't facing front when I did this. So it's Y, and then I got to get rid of the X, and so it's facing frontwards. So having things lined up front is front makes more sense. When you're working on things, you get used to it. So I can make this longer here, and I can make it smaller. And really, this image is on a plane, and you really can only see it straight if you're going to the front view. That's because when I made this plane, I was in the front view. Maybe I should have been in a side view. But we can scale these things down and move it out. And I'm just making the basic body shape here now. Now, you can always modify this and make it a little different for what you want. And it's always good to look at things in perspective. I tend to always work in perspective or one of the side views. Some people like working in this 4 views, and then you can actually see how thick it is, how tall it is, where it's positioned in the front, and trying to keep everything lined up. I think it looks pretty good. I think the handle's a little thick for a hand, but we could do something to this to make it look a little more maybe Star Trekian, if that's a word. If I made it wider, it would start looking more like one of their hand phasers. And do I like that? Comments?
I think it's cool.
Okay, so we'll go like that, but we will do the round discs at the front. And so that's fine. Do you really need any more detail than that? No, you could just come in here and take the front end of this, and I'm using my space bar, and if I'm holding my mouse over the front view here, I can just tap it to move around. We could just color the front of this a yellow color. It looks almost War of the Worlds, where they had the alien had that yellow glow. So if I went to the faces here and just colored them yellow, that could be a laser without any of the detail. It could be a very simple one, and sometimes simple is better. To show that that was a different little segment, you could take this and extrude it and go global on it. See how it's going at an angle because one of these faces is at an angle. And we just make it a little larger, clicking on the cube to activate the center. Again, I don't know why you have to do that. And then move it a little forward. And you could see that would give me a Raygun look already. So if you have something selected and you really like it, you might as well go into the hypershade. And I'm going to make this a nice, clear, shiny, plastic glass looking thing. So a Fong could do it. Anastrophic is kind of a metallic look. Might be interesting on the glass. I'll go anastrophic and see. Now, if I double click on anastrophic, it opens it up in this window here, which is called, I think it's called assets, but I'll have to look at it and make sure display. So here I can come in and I can change the color. And I like orange, so it might as well be orange. It seems like a nice laser color, though I think the red lasers actually are more powerful than orange lasers. So you could look that up scientifically. We can make this a little translucent so we can see through it a little bit. Now, sometimes if these things are hollow, then they look even cooler. So we'll try that in just a second. I'm going to give it a little incandescence, which hides the detail a bit. It makes it glow. So this is always glowing. Maybe it's a little radioactive. And then we can play with the transparency on it. And then since these are still selected, are they still selected? They should have been, but they're not. So this one in the side view, it's very easy to select all these spaces and take it and assign the material to it. So now going to my properties, and I'm in Maya software, good, and I can render this and just give an idea. It looks pretty cool with the picture in the background, but you can see that it's a bit transparent there. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to save it. So I want to save as, and I'm going to say save as just to call it Raygun 3. Save as, continue. And I'm going to take this. This looks like one of those rockets that you pump up with water. Did you ever have those rockets? They're red on the end and blue, and you put water in them and you pump them up. When they got to
Oh,
certain pressure, they shot off.
yeah, like a super soaker.
Kind of like that, but it was, you pump it up with a bicycle pump. And since it had water inside and a little bit of air, the pressure would build up and then it would pop loose and shoot way up in the air and had little fins on the end. The end
Yeah.
was red and I think the base was a blue. But I'm going to take this, I'm going to copy with object mode. I'm going to take this middle part. I'm going to duplicate it. Now, when you duplicate it, it sits right on top of the other object. And if you notice, if you tried to put texture on it, see how it wavers when it moves?
Yeah.
That's because there's two textures exactly on top of each other. So when you duplicate something, you really want to move it or resize it or something. So with this one, I'm going to go R to resize it. I'm going to hit 4 so I can see through. And I'm going to resize it down. And I'm going to make it smaller. So there's a thickness here, but I want it to be fairly even. So I'm going to move it there and make the length a little longer. So it's just a shell. Now, do you need a shell for a ray gun? No, but if you wanted to actually put the inner works inside there and maybe make it where you can take it apart, or you can go in through the front and look at all the little gears and whatever's in there to make the laser work, you could do that. I'm going to move this forward just a hair because I don't like the way this lens would look. And then if I select the outside one, and then it's a little harder to select the inside one, but if you had layers, you could. You have to zoom in and shift and click right on the wire. So now I selected the outside one first, and I can go up here to mesh, Boolean difference, and it cuts it away. Now they're not two separate pieces. And if I hit 6 and I render this, you're going to see that this has a shell. And if I hid the picture behind, which I'll click on and I'll just say display, hide selected, you could see when this is rendered, and you'd see it better if there was an image behind, but it has a little bit of a thickness here that you would see if you had an image behind it, which we did have an image behind it. Display, show all. And if we rendered it, you can kind of see the thickness to it, which I think makes it more interesting, especially if you go and look at it from a front view. See, I can see the thickness of the shell.
Yeah, that's really cool. And you said you did Boolean Union on that?
What's that?
What did you Boolean? You Boolean the inside, right?
Inside out, so it's hollow. If you
Oh,
go inside here, it's hollow. Now there's no lights in there. It's blocking the light, but you can see there's part of that mechanism and part of that upper thing inside there. And plus this image here is right in the center of it. But I think that makes it look a little more interesting. Now, I think we need some detail at the far end, and I think we need something else inside to make it, give it some detail. I don't think I'm going to do all these things, but I do need a sight. I was using this edge here kind of as a sight. So they have this thing with a radar looking thing on it for a sight, but I think I'll just bring something up here for a sight and make it a little simpler. But the back end here, I can go to my front view, which again is messing with us because I lined this up wrong. So front view, so always try to orient things with the front to the front. This is the side to the front, but you can fix it later. I'm just not going to fix it now. And I'm going to go to faces and I'll grab these last. Now I could take 3 to kind of even out the weight, or I could do just 2 to make it a little smaller, to make it seem less important. I think I'm just going to take the 2 and I'm going to assign this orange to it again. And that looks pretty nice. Now, one thing that if you want to select both these oranges again, you can come in here and press on the material and say select objects with material, and it'll select them again. So if you want to go R and resize them, do we like the way that looks? With the next segment? Good. Let me do this and see if I make it wider and then bring it back. Let's see what that looks like in perspective. I don't know if the wider was a good choice. That's interesting. I think I like it. So you can select things that have materials on them easily by pressing on the material. Now notice that material's assigned. I'm going to go Control S and save this again. I'm getting a little paranoid about saving things because we spent a lot of time on this. If I double click here and I don't like it to be orange, maybe the client says, oh, really? We want this to be red, like one of those bottle rockets. Okay. You double click here on the color, make it red. Say, on this one, it's down at the bottom. You have to say done. And it automatically updates to the Raygun and makes them red. Now, I think that this has these little facets, which are interesting. I think it should be smoother, but since it's not quite so smooth right now, we can come in here and we can select faces here and Q, boom, up, Q to deselect the tool. I'm just going to take these ridge right here and go all the way back. And if that big handle thing is in the way, you can go hide it. It's where layers might be even easier. Getting both sides of these. And the other side. Now, I'm going to check my preferences under Windows, Settings and Preferences. And in here with the modeling, there's a keep faces together, and I want that. Because if I didn't have keep faces together and I extruded them, let me extrude it without keep faces together and show you. It would make each one of those cubes separate. And you might not notice if you extruded it globally, but I'm extruding it locally. And you can see how they're separate cubes. So if you came in and took these separate cubes and you grab them, either grab their faces and W, move them, you could start having something with like centipede legs up there. That's not what I wanted, but you can certainly do that. I'm going to undo this and watch below so that it goes back past the extrude, because I can't see it. It's down here in this bottom window. So when I get Control Z, it should say extrude faces.
Hey, you got to cover it up with the
Hypershade. Preferences. Can you see it now? Should be down right in here.
Yeah, we can see.
Okay, I'm just going to go Control Z until I get past that extrude. I did because I'm losing the cubes now. So you want to go past the extrude or else it's going to be extruded and not know it. So here I'm going to get all of those. And remember there's a grow if you want, and grow along edge loop, which is interesting. And what I was going to do with this is take it. I think I'm going to, no, I don't want to hide the other thing right now. I want to extrude it. I'm going to preferences. Preferences. Modeling. And keep faces together. So that when I extrude this, it's all one piece. Globally, that little circle, bringing it up. And that can add to the little ridge there. But if I shorten it this way, it tapers it in an interesting way. And then I can taper it here with this cube and make it like a rail or just a little detail on top. And I like the way that looks. I do that on top of submarines. Now, if that has it there, we might put a little rail underneath just to mimic that. And so I'm going to hide this image, display, hide selection. And I'm going to come right in here and I'm going to select the faces. And you could set this to symmetry on any of the tools and just do X, but I don't think this is X. It would be X if I was right, it's Z. So I'm going to mimic Z. Now, I don't like this symmetry on when I extrude because it doesn't show the tools, but notice when I select this, I can just click and shift. And if I have that selected, I can go around. Might have to hide this thing. So I'll hide this thing. I'll go back to object mode and hide the handle. And then I can come in here and grab these. And when I grab them, it's going to grab two at a time. So it just makes my life a little easier. This one, grow along edge loop, might work or it might go the wrong direction. Grow along loop. Yeah, it's doing it the wrong way. But you have that grow. When I was doing the snake's teeth, it was hard to select and I was doing a lot of growing. So growing pains. Okay, so I have this. And if the symmetry is on, if I try to extrude it, it doesn't give me the handles I want. So I'm going to turn symmetry off. Reset's good enough. And then I'm going to extrude this one globally. Bring it down. And I'm not a doctor, so anything I say about COVID is just my opinion. So just what I did hear it from a doctor, but that's okay. No suing teacher Doug.
Oh, it's all right, Doug. I won't. I promise.
All right, no problem. Just don't get COVID. So we can bring that down. And I think that just gave a more interesting look to the whole device, adding a little detail. So now I'm going to go display, show all. Just going to hit Control S, save it. I'll save it with a different name soon. Now, I want to smooth the ends. I'm going to try smoothing the whole object. but that might smooth those fins too much, or it might make them look good. Smooth. And let's see what they look like when they're smoothed. I think it looks nice smooth. What do you think?
Yeah, it makes it look like a solid piece.
And sleeker, yeah. And
Yeah.
it made these edges here, when we zoom in, we don't have as many facets.
And you just smoothed the body, right? You didn't
I
smooth like
just
that.
smoothed the body. Now you can smooth certain items. I'm just going to undo that. Up, cancel. I'm going to do Control Z until it goes back. And sometimes you have to do it 2 or 3 times because that smoothing is a couple of processes. So I could just go here with my hypershade and say select objects with materials. And so it's selecting just the ends. And I could go mesh smooth just the ends. Oh, looks like it smoothed the whole thing. I really wanted to smooth just the ends. You should be able to smooth just the ends, but I like the way this looks, so that's fine. And we're going to leave it that way. I'm going to I'm going to file save as, and we'll call it Raygun 4. Save, continue. And I think it just needs a little bit of details to make this look better. I think the handle is too thick here. But I'd have to see the hooks with Space Mouse. I decided to go with hooks with his hands or claws, but it might be better to have fingers eventually. But if he takes his suit off, he'll have fingers. Just make this a little narrower. And I think that looks better. So I'm just kind of looking at the proportions of it and seeing how it's balanced. So sometimes having some art background is good. I think it needs little details, and the little details I think I'm going to give it are, I'm going to use spheres. I had to rotate this one on the I'm going to rotate it on the y-axis 90 degrees. And it didn't do what I wanted it to do. So Control Z, and I'll rotate it. Was it Z that rotated it so it was pointing the right way? Doesn't look like it could be correct. 90 up. No, look what I did wrong. Tell me what I did wrong.
You rotated the Z?
I didn't
Oh, you
rotate.
didn't rotate. You translated the Z.
I moved it 90 meters or inches. I think I'm set to inches. So I need to put that back. I can undo it or just type 0, and then I want to rotate the Z. And that puts it this way, but then I want to rotate it forward. And you'd think rotating Z would do it, but sometimes you just want to go in here and modify freeze transformations to kind of reset it. And now I can rotate the Z to 90 because it's not rotating the way I want it to. I want it to rotate this way. So sometimes if you don't know, use the rotation tool. And so I want to rotate the Y. Doesn't look like a Y, but I want to do 90 because I want these ends here towards me. And then I want to take this and size it down, but make it really long. So this is a pin, but it's not, really wouldn't work well on a real weapon because it's thicker in the middle, so you can't take the pin out. But I just made it that way because I wanted it rounded on the ends. And so if I go W and move these up, I can put them in certain places along the shaft here. That could be a cocking mechanism if you grabbed it and pulled it back to cock it, especially if I had a notch. So I'm going to leave it that size. to make it look like there's a notch where you have to reach up and cock it back from either side. You probably grab it and pull it back. Probably wouldn't be quite so rounded, but let me make a notch looking thing. So it looks like you can pull that back. So this cylinder, I'm going to rotate it. And it's messing with me having this lined up the wrong way. And then on the caps of this cylinder, just so I don't have those pizza shapes, I'm going to do this subdivision caps. Just go to 0. Makes a flat end. And if I take this, I'm going to smooth it more by giving it more divisions here, 40. You can do this before you start manipulating it, but if you do it afterwards, it makes a weird shape because you manipulated it and it had 20 and then you gave it 40, so you didn't grab the right parts to manipulate it. So I'm going to stretch this like this and make it narrow like that. I'm going to go W and move it up. And I'm going to close this. Make sure I'm in the front view. Front view. Then I can move that up. Oops. It's there, you just can't see it very well. It should be right in here. And I'm going to squeeze it down and then move it here. And R. So this gets wider in the middle. So I'm going to go W and move this up. I don't want it wider in the middle. I want it to be kind of a continuous shape. So I'm going to come in here to vertices, and I'll get the vertices right from here all the way to there. And I can move them down, but it's not going to work unless I don't retain component spacing. So this one's going to be a little tricky. So with the move tool, which is right here, I'm going to go in and I'm going to say, don't retain component spacing. Component spacing is how these are varied, and if you move them, they'll stay in this position, relative position. But if you come in here and you say, do not retain component spacing, I'll turn it off. So this is component spacing here. But if I grab it now that it says do not retain component spacing, I can tell it to snap to a grid and move it. And it should, hey, you're being bad. It should snap to the grid. Let me try this here. And it should straighten out if the component spacing is not contained. Let me try it with the move tool again. I'm not retaining component spacing, so that should snap to the grid. Let me see if it's not doing what I told it to do. It's being wrong. I'm going to reset the tool and try it again. Let me try that one more time. Because those should, there. See how it's straight? So that was a little tricky. But what I did is turn off the component spacing, and then I took the object, which I'll go to object mode, and I moved it up, W, here, and it's snapping. I don't want it snapping anymore. So I always turn this snapping off when I'm done. but I want this edge to be straight and not a curve. So if I go there and I grab the vertices, I think I want to deselect this one, shift. Then if I move them and I have the snapping on, should work with just the grids, W, they'll snap straight. And so it gives me this notch thing. Okay. So why did I make this notch? It's so I can bullion a hole in this laser gun. Going to object mode, turning my snapping off because it's a pain, and select the object mode. I think I'd like this better if it was rotated 180 degrees this way. Minus 180. Notice I moved it so I knew which one to change. W, moving it down into position, and then move it forward. And so that bolt can be in here. And I'm going to make it a little shorter action by going R, because I don't want to get too close to the handle when you have to pull this bolt back. And why you have a bolt on a laser gun is another question, but don't ask. So I've got the body, and then I shift and select the hole. Selected the body first, and then shift select, and it's mesh Boolean difference. Now, don't rely on this because sometimes it's just a pain. So, but if we look at this, it worked. And there's a notch in there now that you can use this and pull this back. I think this should be shorter. And I think it should be a cylinder instead. So I'm going to keep this as a detail and move it forward and just go R. So it's just like rivets sticking out here. And I can move it down. So it lines up with the middle pretty much. And so that looks good as a rivet, but I want the bolt to be a cylinder, and I'll rotate this on the X. And this cylinder I will make, depending upon where you're going to see it. If it's not in the main shot, you might leave it 20. And we do that. And then down here, the caps, I'll go 0. And then I can R, make this smaller, make it longer, move it up, put it in that hole, go to the side view, which is the front view in this case, hit F to fit it in. F will fit one object, A will fit all objects, and I'll go R and resize it so it fits right there, and I'll go W, push it there, and then I'll look at this in perspective view. And I think that's long enough to grab. I think it can be just a little shorter. And so that's going to be there. And that can be a movable part because you can parent it to this gun if you really wanted it to look like a movable part. I don't see the hole in here. Oh, it is a hole. We can go inside. So you can actually make part of the, nope, the hole doesn't go all the way through. I didn't get it low enough to be a hole. So it doesn't go through, but we could do this. I'm just being a little detailed oriented. Does your laser gun have to have this detail? No. So I'm going to go like this. And I think I'll use a cube. cube, make it a little bigger, move it up. Make it a little longer, make it a little narrower. Place it inside. Let me move it just a little bit. So it's back here. It's right there. So that should make, let's make it a little wider. And so I'm going to cut that hole so you can actually see it through there. And so I select. Now, if you wanted to be a different color, if you colored this cube first, like I will do hyper shade, and I'll just make it the Raygun orangish color, sign it. Then if I cut it, it will actually leave that color on the inside, but I'd be better off coloring the laser first. So let me make a laser color. I'm going to use anastrophic again because it gives you kind of a metal look. And double click on that and I'll call it body, gun body. Don't call it a color because you may change the color. Some people call it blue, red, gray. So we're going to make this a darkish gunmetal blue, like in here with the anastrophic. And then what we can do is we can apply that to the body. But if we do, it's going to lose the noses, but we can select those. I'm going to go here to the anastrophic. That's the red. And I'm going to say select objects with material. And I'm going to go over here, create quick selection sets. It's under sets. And call it L-A-Z-E-R, laser tips. And say okay. Because when I apply this to the body by dragging it in the middle mouse, it's going to apply it to the whole thing. And I don't want it applied to the whole thing. So now I'm going to go here and under create, I made the sets, but under select, there's quick selection sets, laser tips, and I'll assign the orange by say assign material to selected. You can't middle mouse drag it or I'll color the whole thing. And so now I'm ready. Let me close this, done. And now I'm ready to come in, select that cube, select the body, and say mesh Boolean difference. And it did something completely different. So I'm going to make sure I'm selecting the cube first, because that's what I want to get rid of. Oh, wait, what I want to keep, I select first. So I did it wrong. And then I select the cube, mesh Boolean difference. So whatever you want to keep, you select first. And that should have left a notch in there, but that notch should be the orange color. Let me see if I can see. You can't see it because this is in the way. But you should be able to see the orange inside there where the bolt is.
Yeah.
And we have a hole down into the handle and some mechanism in there. And you could even do something like this if you wanted to. Put maybe a cube W. And that cube could be part of the bolt action, which if I did R and made it a little narrower, R, W, and maybe even could be angled down, I think. W. Now, notice if I go R, see how it's doing it locally, which is fine, but you can change that in your resizing or your move tool. You can tell it to move this world, or you can tell it to go globally or component. So if I do object, it's that way. World is this way. So sometimes you want to change these to make them resize or move the way you want. So I'm just resizing that like that. And so I'll take this piece and this space here, and I'm probably going to make them a more of a chrome color. And you can go under mesh, combine them. So now if they move this to cock the gun, there's a little bit of a mechanism inside.
That's really cool.
Yeah, kind of fun. Now here, notice how this is smoothing oddly around this hole. You could come in and grab the different edges here, here, all the way around. You'd have to grab the edges, and then you could make those edges. I think I can go grow along loop, control plus, it's actually control shift and then the greater than, control shift greater than arrow, and it'll grow. Now it's growing along the other edges, which I don't want. But if you grabbed all these edges, which I'm not going to at this point, edge, and you got them all the way around, there's another one right in there. You could go mesh display, harden edge. And I don't know if you're going to see a difference with just those few softened. But if you went all the way around, it would make this look a little better probably around the edge of that. It's not horrible. I like that glowing band inside, just as a little detail. And you know, maybe you just put spheres inside here of chemicals, kind of like the chemicals for the rocket. Control S, I'm saving. Continue. Kyle, let's do food on Wednesdays because I always am not around on Saturdays, seems like.
Okay.
That's fine. So here we've got this, and we got this little pin here, which is maybe like a rivet. Now you could actually make a screw head if you wanted to. Why don't I make a screw head just to show you? Take this one here. Oops. Trying to grab the object. And I don't want a rounded one. So I want one where I can take this apart. I could even boolean it in half and, you know, take it apart if you wanted to. I think that's a little bit too much, but that's all right. We would call it field stripping. I'm going to take this and I'm going to mesh separate for now and just duplicate this. I'm a big fan of duplicating things. Modify center pivot, and then I can move it forward, and I'll just make it a little smaller. And W. Bring it out. Now, if this was actually a screw head, it would be angled to match the angle of this piece, which is angled slightly. See how it's dipping in a bit? there. So it would be actually angled a little bit like this. And we'll angle that later. But I want to do a Phillips head kind of thing on it. So it looks like a Phillips head screwdriver. Phillips head's the ones with the X. The other ones are called standard. So if I take a cube and I go W, and I'm just going to move it up so it's out of the way. And I make it smaller. I can use this as a tool to boolean. If I duplicate it and then I rotate it, in this case, the Z minus 90, or it could be 90, it'd be fine. I've got this X shape. Now, Phillips head actually has kind of a point. So if you had other things, you could make a point. I don't think it makes a difference. If we looked at it, this is going to look okay. I'm going to combine those under Mesh, Combine. I'm going to take it and W, move it down. And so I have to kind of position this by looking at it. If we would have left things centered, it would have been easier to position. I'm going to make it smaller. So it's the size of the screw head. I'm going to go to my front view to make sure I line it up correctly. And you can hit F to fit it in, so that's easier. Put this right in the middle. Looks pretty centered to me. Go to perspective. It's sticking out a little bit. I just wanted to cut a little depth in there. So I can select this one. It's the one I want to keep. And then Shift, select the other, and do Mesh Boolean Difference. And now I have a Phillips head screwdriver, and it didn't do it right. Oh, because it's so deep, it's getting into, no, I don't think that's right. It just didn't Boolean it right. Let me do this and undo and get both of them and W, move them out. Don't think that makes a difference, but I just want to see what's going on with it. I think I'll grab this one and just make it a little deeper. Now, sometimes the Boolean doesn't like it if things aren't triangular. It's just something I've tried before. Also, it may not like this combine. I'm going to separate it, and I'm going to Boolean these two together. I shift and selected one, select the other, mesh. When you go to the Boolean difference, I'm going to the settings and just say reset. And there's a couple different settings here which might help, but I'll apply it. That should have, that destroyed it, which is really weird. Of course, that could be a tool to turn this. So see how the Boolean operation is sometimes not nice. So I'm going to go there and there, select it. I'm going to try normal. I'm going to try legacy, and I'm going to go apply. And so did I do difference? That's operator error. What should I do instead of difference? I want to combine the two.
Combine and then Boolean.
Well, no, not combine, but with the Boolean, I can do union.
Union, yeah.
That makes it one piece, and sometimes that Boolean's better. So I'm going to select this one. I'm going to go Shift and select the other. And then I'm going to try Boolean difference. And that made a nice screw head. So sometimes that Boolean modeler is a pain. Now, if you want the screw countersunk, I can grab this face and I can go R, resize it a little bit, and move it. Not enough that I let those holes come through. So do you know the difference between the countersunk screws and the regular screws?
No.
Regular screws have a round head, and countersunk, you actually have to drill a little funnel shape so they go in. And the reason you do countersunk, they're more streamlined, or you don't get your hand caught on them or whatever. The old Spitfire, do you know Spitfire, the airplane?
Yes.
It had countersunk rivets, but the Air Ministry wanted to put regular rivets on it. But the pilots complained and said it's going to be slower because all the little bumps are going to slow it down. And the Air Ministry, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't seem like that would be a big problem. And so one of the designers, I think the one that originally designed the Spitfire, decided that, well, okay, tomorrow we'll have one that's not countersunk and one that's countersunk, and we'll fly them. Well, how are you going to do that? He said, don't worry about it. So he went and he bought a bag of split peas and he glued it on top of each one of the rivets and had it done in the morning. And they tried it, and the Spitfire was about 10 miles per hour slower with the rivets sticking out. So they decided that they wanted them countersunk because any advantage you can give your pilots is a good thing. So there's that rivet. Now, unfortunately, with my rivet, my screw, the gun is there and you can see the gun through it, but I think it's okay. We're not going to notice that much. And to put this on the other side, I'm just going to go, and this is the Z-axis, mirror on the Z and apply. Sometimes this merges them and I don't want it to combine them. And I'll just say apply. And so I have rivets on both sides. Now, I don't want just 2 rivets. I think they're both selected. So I can go here. And I want maybe 3, and then a couple over here, one there, definitely. Now you could duplicate them and move them, or you can say edit, duplicate special, tell it that I want to move it on the X axis. I'll reset this. I want to have, I'll try 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll say 5, and that would make 6. 1, 2, 3. I want an odd number, so I'm going to go 4. And I want to move it on the X. 1 grid. I'm going to try. Now, I think this gets a little wider as it goes along, so we may have to adjust them. But let's try that and apply. And do I want them? We'll just do it. Oh, wrong direction. That doesn't look bad. I think I'll go here 1.5. So sometimes you have to try. You have to click in the screen to undo it. And then we want to go minus on the X. Minus, apply. And that made them, but they're inside. I'm going to go W and move them. So those are okay there. I think I'll select these. Have to shift to deselect. I'm just going to move them back. And these 2. So I'm just spending a little extra time on detail, but I think it makes it look nice. Can I go R? Nope, that's not going to work. So I need to select each one of those and move them just a little bit out. So let me just grab this one, move it a little bit out. Sometimes you have to say modify center pivot to see the handles. And then this one, I'll move it a little bit out. Modify center pivot. Notice how it's not moving with the object, it's moving a little bit different. So you can come in here and you can say, I want it to move object. And object's not doing it for me, so interesting. Normal. Along object axis. Well, that's kind of globally, but I want it to be moved here and then just a little bit up so they still line up. And so these need to move world, and then I can just move it in and then move them both down once I've moved them in. And maybe I won't move them in as much. Boom, that one, and I'll move them down. It's a little bit of work for these details, but I like them. So I'll move it back just a little bit. And there they are. So we could do a few more screws there too, but I think you need at least 3. I was going to go for 5. I think where that handle is, definitely need a screw. And you could look at the numbers in your properties window to put them exactly in the same place. But we're not going to see this from both sides at the same time. So if I just line it up to where the handle is, I think it's going to be fine. Sometimes it's hard to get it right where you want it. You can type in numbers here, but I'm okay. So I think that looks good. The 3 details is enough. I was going to have a safety, but I think it's working pretty well. And I want to go in here, grab this, and that, and combine. Come up with some different textures. I think these are too high now that I look at these. So I'm trying to look at the aesthetics too of it. Can't move it down without moving them out first. Then I'll shift and get them and move them down together. And that's better lining up there in the middle of that ridge. All right, we try mirroring those down to below, but I think I'm okay with it. So one thing I'd like to do to put inside here that's going to make it look a little more Raygun-ish, saving. File, save scene as. Anybody have any questions?
No, it seems to be pretty straightforward.
Are you doing okay with exporting things that you can put in with video? I still haven't looked at bringing video into Maya, but I'll try to do that next time, especially if it's
Yeah. I mean, that whole process seems fairly like it's doable.
doable. Yeah, it just takes a little work, and you got to get the settings right. But you can always ask me, even if it's midweek or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a tube Now, some of these, they Maya used to have a tube, a pipe, and it's here. It's kind of hidden. So I'm going to make a pipe. And you'll notice that this pipe has a hole. And you can adjust how big that hole is here in your properties window. Pipe. You can mess with the segments too. I think it'd be neat if this pipe had, I'm going to go 8 segments like that. So it looks like a hex nut. A hex nut is not 8 segments. What is a hex nut?
6 segments.
6 segments. Very good. Have you been watching BattleBots? It's on again. I love BattleBots.
What show is that? I've heard of it. I've never really watched it.
They have these robots, and they have saws, or they have hammers, or have these big spinning titanium wheels that tear up the other robot. And so they fight for a period of time. I don't know if it's 5 minutes or what, like 5 minutes. And so the 2 robots, sometimes they have more than 2 robots fighting at the same time, but normally it's 2 robots and it's elimination. You either destroy the other robot or you can throw it. The sides of the arena have these spinning things that grind you up, and they have hammers that the other people can operate on their side. They have a hammer, and it's like a 150-pound big hammer. So if your bot gets near there, that can go boom and smack on it. And sometimes they catch on fire because the battery leads get loose and they attack each other. And I love it. One's called Tombstone, has a big old spinning thing and it looks like a tombstone. There was one called Rusty, which was not a very good robot, but it was really cute.
Are they built by real people? Because I saw
Built
this.
by real people. Sometimes it's college teams, but it's people who are into robotics, NASA people, other people, but anybody who wants to build them. But most of them are made out of titanium and have, like, tool steel grinders or whatever on them to tear up the other thing. So they're really very advanced. Some of them have threads. Most of them have wheels. Yeah, it's on again. It's on Discovery. I watched it. I think it was on Thursday nights. I love it. It's fun. Because they just tear, pieces go flying everywhere. Sometimes they catch on fire.
That's cool.
That's pretty neat. Yeah, I like BattleBots. So. And I'm going to take this, and now before you animate this thing, you have to make sure that you delete the history and freeze transformations on things. And once you do that, notice the pipe doesn't give me the settings, or it shouldn't, once I freeze transformations and edit, delete history. Notice I can't change the number of segments at that point, but that's all right. I'm just going to go with this one and hit. Hey, I'm in there. That's why it's not working there. Go R. I'm just going to make it longer and narrower. And I'll make it longer. I'll actually make it go all the way through. This can be kind of a sight thing, but it reminds me of Quickly Down Under, where he had that sniper rifle called the Sharp. I think it was called the Sharps. And so I could have that sticking out, but I think it's going to look more interesting if it's moved back in here. Could even stick out the end, but I'm not going to, maybe a little there too. R and W to move it. So we can see it inside when we render this. It could be even a glowy color. I can't see it there with the transparencies that I have, but can I see it here? I can see it just a little. So if I go to my hypershade and I go make this just a little more transparent, then when I render it, you can see it inside. And that could be a glowy white or whatever. Also, I could make torus, which is a donut shaped donut. Rotate it minus 90. And this, you can go with toruses and you can change the number of twists or the number of segments. Middle mouse, if you have that selected. And so this torus could have 6 or 8, like the hex nut. And it could be even twisted, but I don't think I'm going to twist it. I'm going to go W, move it up, and move it forward. And so it's going to have these details. Now, if I go to my right view, I can look and see if that's centered on the pipe. Sometimes if I go to wireframe 4, I can see it a little better if it's centered on that pipe. And it's not. And is the pipe looks pretty well centered. So,
Yeah, it looks good.
yeah, if I have this selected, so notice when it's in wireframe, you have to actually click on the wire for that torus. Going to the right view, actually front view, and hit F to fit. I'm going to make it a little narrower just for fun. And then we can duplicate this one. Now, before I duplicate it, I could color it. Let me make this a nice, I'm not going to use anastrophic. I think there's a glow, but I think I'm going to do Lambert, because no shininess to it, because it's just going to glow anyway. I'll do Lambert. I'll call it Death Rings. Yeah, it's important if you're calling it Death Rings, spell death right. You don't want death to be mad. I'm going to make it a nice bright yellow. And down here, this window, you always have to hit done, and it always likes hiding the done on my computer. And I'm going to take that and I'm going to give it incandescence, which makes it glow. And it could be a little translucent, maybe transparent. But the glow is going to kill that anyway, but let's try it. Go here, and we have to go in there and grab this. Make sure we click right on a edge of a wire. And then with my hypershade, I can say assign. So it's going to be yellow. I have it selected still. And zooming out. This is where I'm going to use edit, duplicate special. And I'm going to, I always reset this when I come in up here under edit to reset, because it has numbers from last time. And I want 1, 2, I think I want 3. So I want 2 more. And I want them to move, and this is minus Z, I believe. Let me close my hypershade. Minus X. So X. So I'm going to go minus, and one grid is 1. So I'm going to go minus 0.75. And if I'm wrong, I just do it again. Minus 0.75. And I want them to scale down. And I want to scale them down. I'm going to go 0.8 all the way along. You can hit tab and then go 0.8, tab and 0.8, and then we'll apply. And where did they go? I don't see them. Oh, I did it wrong. What did I do wrong? Look at my numbers. Can you read them?
Yeah, you translated it negative.
I did minus, but I did 75 grids. I wanted 0.75.
Oh yeah.
I have to click here, Control Z. I'm glad to point out those mistakes because did it say it undid the duplicate down below?
It says undo select.
Okay, so I think I'm okay. I'm going to go here and I'm going to go minus 0.75. I'm going to say apply, but it wasn't selected. So I'm going to go here and zoom in and select it and apply it. And it's going the wrong way, but I like it. So I'm going to leave it in there. And then I'm going to go 0.75 and apply. So those will be inside there. Think I need 2 more? No, I think it looks fine.
Yeah.
Just render it. So those are going to glow inside there. 2 more? 1 more?
One.
One
One more.
more. We'll go with Yulia because she's always right. Remember that, Kyle. Here we go. And we'll just do 1 more. So here in my duplicate edit, duplicate special, oops, Control Z. I got to go edit, duplicate special, go to the dialog box, and I need to just do 1 more. 1 more, apply. It's a little far. Why it's a little far? I don't know. I'm going to move it here. That looks pretty good. So here, better save, continue. I need to finish some more textures on this. This is extra. And these are extra. I might leave them. I might use them later. And 0.75, I might have some rings out here. Don't see them. What are these? There they are. Just get rid of them. There's more there. So going to perspective, hitting 7 to do the light view. And there's no light in here, but it might glow in the dark. Oh, those look good. I can make them glow some more, maybe. Maybe there should be 1 right back here, just as a highlight. I think it's looking very nice for a Raygun that's a different design. Very nice. If we go close up, it gets these little facets I don't like. So I might even just smooth this 1 more. Oh, it's not smooth. Let's do the mesh. Let's smooth it. Good. And that looks pretty good. Oh, it gave me some neat look here when I smoothed it. Look at that.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's a happy accident. I love the way it looks up here. We didn't do that on purpose, but I love it. Very nice.
Yeah, that's cool.
Everyone's going to ask me, well, how did you do that? I didn't mean to. I think it looks good, especially when I get textures on these other parts.
Yeah, it looks good.
Yeah, it looks pretty good. Okay, so there's the Raygun saving. And let me open up. I got the desktop. I got the snake done, and I was really happy with the textures. Space mouse. scenes, and I animated it. I finally ended up deleting all the animation. It was giving me problems. And then I saved it as a bod file where it will say snake bod. And then that way there's no animation on it. And then you save it as snake strike, snake move, snake attack. So it'll be under here, SN. Snake bones bod. But then I did a slither here, number 7. Our slither, try, slither. I think it was 7. There he is. And so finally, AJ, Kyle, Yulia, I wrapped the snake skin in a cylindrical way around the snake. And the snake skin actually had those scales once the seams met and gave a really neat look underneath and even on the bottom of his face. Now,
Wow, that's really good.
It took me a long time to get, yeah, the Photoshop documents make a big difference, but here he is.
Well, it looks really good.
Yeah, it turned out really well. But it took me a really long time to get in here, and I used the up arrow to move that down to get his teeth. I got to put a tongue in him, but to color his teeth and his mouth were a real pain because it had all these polygons because I smoothed them. And so it was hard to select the snake's mouth inside and the teeth. It took me, an hour and a half or something, which if you think ahead and colorize it ahead, it's much easier. But this, when I render it, I thought it looked pretty good. Oh, it's going to take a long time to render. It's the, let me show you a different one. Hit escape and then you can get out of there. It's just at the really large size and there's a lot going on. But if I go here and I go there and I go move this out of the way. If I go into Space Mouse and I go to images, here's the snake rendered. I didn't render it with an alpha channel, which I need to re-render it, and I put a motion blur on the render. So you see the rattle is motion blur, and I'm just clicking to get it to move through. But this is actually a loop. Once I get to the end at 96, it'll go back to the beginning. So it just keeps moving like this. And he just has a little bit of a mouth movement like he's going to bite you. And I think the snake and the skin and even the bump map turned out really well. I think if I was to do this again, I would add just a couple more bones near the tail so it kinks better. See how there's a kink here and there? It's not horrible, but a couple more. And I really got his eyes looking a lot better. Let me see if I can move this over so you can see his eye. I made the eye with a separate object. And then when I tried to combine it to the snake, then the bones, which were still linked, the eye kind of stayed where it was when everything else moved. So I had to unskin it and then skin it again once I got rid of all the animation. So you really want to do your UV textures, do all your modeling before you start putting bones in it. All right, so that's the end of today. Thank you very much, and I'm going to say goodbye.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Have a nice day.
Bye-bye. Take care.